When there's an obstacle, are you going to climb up it? Are you going to go around it? Are you going to try to break it down so you can go through it? Like, that's just the reality, and it sucks, but everything does happen for a reason. And to be honest, it could have taught us something.
How can I overcome an ACL tear? This feels hopeless. So this question really hit with me. Obviously, I mentioned now 2.5 weeks ago, I dislocated my shoulder. Thankfully, I didn't tear anything. So, well, I did tear something, but nothing, no like rotator cuff or slap tear or anything like that. But when you dislocate your shoulder, it does rip a lot of different muscle or tendons. There always will be something going on with that. And it was really demotivating because I couldn't even move my arm right. I couldn't navigate it correctly. And it is quite upsetting. And this is something I've received from my clients a lot. Just this component of like, getting sick or getting hurt and then just feeling like so hopeless, maybe depressed, really not being able to see the light at the end of the tunnel, not being motivated to do frankly anything. And it was funny, I saw a meme that really resonated with me. It was just like how you look back on life when you weren't sick while you're sick. And it was just like sunshine, like unicorns, just like happy living. It was so funny because I thought it was so applicable. Like when you're sick, all you want is to be healthy. And that's why there's that quote, the sick man, all he wants is health, right? Whereas the healthy man, he wants money, he wants success, all these different things, right? So it's a good reminder how important our health is. So with this, I think this question in general, I've never had an ACL tear. I've heard this is absolutely horrible. And I know this one in particular is very tough. So anything ACL, anything with your knee, anything with your shoulder, these are all pretty significant. And I think one quote I always like that's really been helpful for me is we break, we heal. Like that's the way we are as humans. And I think it's a good reminder, especially when I'm sick, it feels like the world's falling down. I'll get man cold, be a bit of a baby, but it's a good reminder. I've been sick before, I've gotten through it. And going back for me, I mentioned I had my hernia surgery 5 years ago, I suppose now. And in the moment, I was reading all this stuff about how I'll never be the same. You'll never be able to lift heavy, yada yada, all these crazy different things, and it was really demotivating. It was really scary, and I had to wait for my surgery, and I knew that surgery would really inhibit my lifting. And like I've gone my whole 10, 14 years, whatever it's been of lifting without missing a week. I've always made a point to get in the gym to be successful. And that was really scary to me, having a surgery and having that pop up. So regardless, what I'm getting at is I got through that. I don't even recognize, like I wouldn't even remember I have a hernia at this point, which I'm so proud to say. I'm strong. It doesn't scare me. It never burns. And with this shoulder, my goal is very much to be the same. And it's funny because Kyle actually dislocated his shoulder differently. And there's obviously different severity of these things, but it's funny because he's like, I don't even remember which shoulder it was, which is absolutely awesome. So just remember, no matter what happens, there is hope. And a couple things I wanted to mention on for this question is that life is seasons. So it'll be highs and lows, and it's natural for these things to pop up. Illnesses, surgeries, injuries, like these things are guaranteed to occur. They're not fun. They suck. We can do a lot to prevent them, but sometimes it's just dumb luck and it's really uncomfortable. And it's good to have that reality check to say, hey, I will get through this. There's light at the end of the tunnel, and don't be doomsday about it. Don't let yourself fall into that trap of like, oh, it's not going to be the same. What do I care anymore? And just start eating food, not moving, not taking it seriously. Instead, it's like, what positives can I find from this? What opportunities are there? I saw another dude at the gym, really jack guy, working on a sling. And I'm like, hey man, what happened? And I was curious if he had the same injury. But he said he actually tore his pec. And I've heard that is one of the most painful things ever. I always have a fear of pec, bicep. These are very, very painful injuries. And he said he took it right off the bone. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's way worse than I have. But he's like, I'd rather my upper because it's harder to be motivated to train legs and build legs. So he's just hitting legs hard. He's like, it is what it is. It's in the off season. And I think that mindset's so good. Instead of him just throwing away everything he's done, he's still in there. So even with your ACL, like you absolutely can overcome it. And I like when I get hurt, any injury, anything, the hernia, I give the same tips to all my clients. And that is to what can you control and what can you do better? So for me, with my shoulder, I can eat better than ever. I have the opportunity to maximize my nutrition, maybe start cooking more, double down my protein, which we know is regenerative, continue with my supplementation, really get amazing, phenomenal rest, really focus on the quality and intensity of my sleep, really make sure I'm getting lots of cardio and walks, training my legs really hard, and then most importantly, doing your case-specific physio, because what's tough is when you're hurt, you want to do nothing, but movement, motion is lotion, as we like to say, and moving it, putting in compromised positions, intelligent intelligently and safely is how you can recover faster. And there's a reason all these athletes will get these life-changing, altering, horrible injuries and be able to come past them. And I'm sure there is some other drug component in there, but in general, they have an amazing physio team, they have care, they have people pushing them, and they have a goal. They need to get back to their sport or they don't get paid. So for you, I really recommend setting small goals, set little things. Like I'm like, next week I want to be able to lift with Kyle, just go through the movements. Doesn't need to be the heaviest weights in the world. I got my leg days to full intensity. Slowly upping my weights on the upper machines I can do. I've been working on my mobility. The physio I was working with gave me different milestones. And when I hit those milestones, I'd unlock that next thing. So I'd lock the band. I'd unlock like a more challenging movement with my arm, eventually getting to weights and then increasing it. So if you can stack these small wins, look towards the end of the tunnel and just put in that work, understand some days will be better than others. You'll be fine for anything that pops up. And understanding that these things do pass, whether it be physical or emotional, because I know a lot of people will struggle with like breakups or they'll struggle with people passing. And like, I always like to remember, it's like, how can you still take care of yourself as intelligently as possible? And even for me, like it's been harder to pick up my kids or do the things I want to do. And to me, that's very motivating to be like, oh, I need to get back to be able to do these things I love, like just fun little day-to-day activities. So I know that was quite a big ramble, if you will. But like I said, even with the hernia, I had that mindset, and they said it could be like 3 to 6 months. I remember I was pretty much 100 after like 5-6 weeks. With this, I'm definitely ahead of schedule, which I'm really proud of. And I think like most things, if you put in the work, you'll get the reward.
Even working off of that, it's a good reminder that perspective really is everything. So even like Josh said, like the healthy person, or sorry, the sick person, the only thing they want is to be healthy. And I would say whatever it is that you've ever gone through, like try to keep that as like a core memory. So whenever there's those days where you don't want to do something, it just sticks in the top of your head because it's going to push you. So even myself, as I'm sitting here thinking about how much I dislike leg day, which I'll talk about afterwards, I look back to the times where I had an injured groin, or even when I had my motorcycle accident, which took out my shoulder, so it was dislocated, but then my knee was completely banged up, so I couldn't do upper body, or I couldn't do lower body, which just absolutely sucked. So looking back on that, I just remember sitting there just wishing I could go to the gym, thinking about how grateful I am to be able to move and to be healthy. So you can use that as like good motivation afterwards. And I know it's easy to forget about that type of stuff and just take it all for granted, as a lot of us often do. But I just think like there's so much that can be done. And I think even anytime I'm sick, I just use as an example, I try to think, okay, well, maybe I could read a little bit of extra of my book. That's something I've been putting off a little bit. Maybe I can, even mobility is something it's easy to skip out on. Maybe yoga for some people. Like you can always do something. And it's just a reminder that so many people will try to get rid of absolutely everything when the challenge comes in front of them. And then that's how they just never work out again. That's how they never eat healthy again. When something goes wrong, they just completely forget about the journey because they're like, well, there's this obstacle, I just got to stop. Whereas even Josh was sharing on the story on Instagram the other day, like when there's an obstacle, are you going to climb up it? Are you going to go around it? Are you going to try to break it down so you can go through it? Like that's just the reality, and it sucks, but everything does happen for a reason. And to be honest, it could have taught us something. Like even my motorcycle, I look back and it's easy to be like, blame everything around me. But it's like, maybe I could have done a better job learning, or maybe I should have not grabbed my front brake too much, or whatever the case is. So it's hard for a lot of us to accept, but yeah, just something to remember when stuff like this does happen.
Yeah, and as corny as it is, people say like little things like, oh, at least it wasn't your good arm. And as silly as it is, it's actually a true thing. Like it's amazing to me how much more inconvenient that would be. And Kyle's point of perspective was so good. When I was in the hospital meeting the surgeon just to make sure everything was okay and I didn't need surgery, when I was leaving and I was just like waiting for a ride home, I saw a guy in there with no legs, and I'm like, okay, like what do I have to complain about? And then when I was in the hospital in pain with it, I'm like, at least my knee isn't cut up like Kyle's was. Like it's funny, like these little things, but I think obviously everyone has different situations, but just understand these things will pop up. They're things you can absolutely get through. And even I thought it was a good reminder of how much worse it could be. No bones were broken. And even though in those moments, whatever happens to you could seem like the worst thing in the world, most often there's something you can do, an area you can improve. You can use it as a season, like Kyle said, to increase your learning, to bang out some work, to actually take some time to rest. So just changing that silver lining and removing that like just entire doomsday gloomy thing. Like pulling yourself out of that will be so powerful. And one thing I love helping my clients with, like I just had my client Dominique had a knee surgery. It's been great seeing her transition and get through that and keeping that higher level mindset of like, well, why would I just throw away progress because I have this thing that's already inhibiting progress? It's like, what can I do? I have another client who had a cancer scare, and thank goodness it was just a scare. But even with her, I was so proud of her because even when she was in that position of uncertainty, she's like, I still want to take care of myself. Health is still a priority and I want to feel my best. And this just reiterates how important it is for me to be healthy during this time. And like, I just love that because it's just so much easier to be like, oh, I'm so scared. This is horrible. What do I care anymore? I'm just going to eat what I want, drink what I want, do what I want, not take care of myself. But you just end up punishing yourself worse for it. And it's a good reminder too, even me, I've worked hard to have really healthy shoulders. I've worked hard to have a good muscle base, to have good bone density. And that work probably saved me from more issues. So I think it's just a great reminder, the importance of staying healthy, the importance of having a positive mindset, and most importantly, the importance of having accountability, someone there to push you and help you actually be reasonable, stay on track, and put things in perspective. But that was the first question. I hope that was helpful. Once again, I can't get too into the weeds about specific movements for ACLs and stuff, but I do find like really learning what you need to be doing and doing it consistently, pushing yourself intelligently, listening to your body. These are all general things outside of everything else I mentioned, but this is a good umbrella for anything that can pop up in life.